Welcome again, everyone. Shalom. Great to see everyone. Tonight, we're going to get into some of the last words that Jacob spoke. We're going to get into the blessing of the 12 tribes, the blessing of Jacob to his 12 sons, according to the legends of the Jews. So, this is going to be very interesting. We're also going to read about his final moments. And so, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Over there in the chat, we have Kalamentos says shalom to all. Shalom, Kalamentos. Great to see you. 1 John 2:26 says good evening. Shalom. Good evening, 1 John 2:26. Welcome. As always, we got Will again at Sheepdog Ministries. Shalom, Will. Great to see you. Welcome, guys. Hope you're all having an awesome evening. Psalm 94 says, hello, everyone. Shalom and blessings one and all. Blessings multiplied to you as well. And Byron says, shalom, friends. Shalom, Byron. All right. So, we're going to get into the legends of the Jews. We are reading, actually, we're pretty much we're mostly done. The second volume, the first chapter of the second volume. It is a very, very long chapter. And so we've got a lot of things to read. And again, for those of you who are not familiar with the Legends of the Jews, it's a book that was compiled about approximately 100 years ago by Louis Ginsberg, and he put together all kinds of extra biblical sources all together in one book, and he called it the Legends of the Jews. So we're reading from that because, hey, we've got more information, and the more we know, the better, right? Vinny from Down Under, welcome, Vinny. Vinny says, shalom, everyone. Shalom, Vinny. And PT Quillen says, what tribe was black people? Well, the 12 tribes of Israel they'd be Jewish, right? So they'd be Jewish. And so I know there's a different opinions as to all that kind of thing. And I know that there are people, let's say, for example, in Ethiopia, that say that they are descendants of Levi, but originally it would have been the 12 tribes of Israel. With the 12 tribes of Jacob would have been all your typical Jewish kind of people. So anyway, let's get into the Legends of the Jews. Again, this is volume 2, chapter 1, and it's about 3/4 of the way through. I'm reading from a website called sacredtexts.com, the Legends of the Jews from there. And so let's get into this. Let me just check it. All right. Yeah. Let's begin. The blessing of the 12 tribes. When Joseph and his and his 2 sons left Jacob, envious of the bountiful blessings bestowed upon the 3, said, the whole world loves a favorite of fortune, and our father has blessed Joseph thus because he is a ruler of men. Then spoke Jacob, they that seek the Lord shall not want any good thing. I have blessings enough for all. Jacob summoned his sons from the land of Egypt and bade them come to him at Ramses. First, however, commanding them to make themselves clean, that the blessing he was about to bestow might attach itself to them. Another one of his commands was that they were to establish an academy, by the members of which they were to be governed. When his sons were brought into his presence by the angels, Jacob spoke, saying, take heed that no dissensions spring up among you, for union is the first condition of Israel's redemption. Wow, isn't that awesome? Union is the first condition of Israel's redemption. And let me just say this. You think about this for a minute. In the Gospel of John, chapter 17, Really, this is the Lord's Prayer. I know Our Father who art in heaven, they call that the Lord's Prayer, but really, the Lord's Prayer is the prayer that the Lord actually prayed, And so John chapter 17 gives us a really detailed and lengthy prayer of the Lord. It's the Lord's Prayer. And in that prayer, we know and we read about how his heart is for his people to be in unity, to be one. And you think about it, out of all the groups of people today on earth, Christians, especially from the Protestant branch of Christianity, they say there are over 43,000 denominations. 43,000. Isn't that like, I mean, in a way it's amazing, but not amazing in a good way. You know what I mean? It's like, how many ways can you be divided? And I know a guy who said that he thought he'd study all these 43,000 denominations. And he said, I'm going to see if I can find a common in all of them. And he said he did find a common thread in all of them. And the common thread is that they all claim to be led by the Holy Spirit. You all claim to be led by the Spirit, and so this it teaches us a lesson. A lot of people today in the Christian world are the same way. It's like, they focus more on what they believe the Holy Spirit is telling them and leading them, as opposed to what the scriptures actually say. They should be getting into the Tanakh. They should be getting into the Torah, to the law, to the prophets, to the Ketuvim. They should be really getting into that, studying it, reading it, more than just going by what they believe the Holy Spirit is saying to them or leading them. You think about this. Yeshua, he rebuked people time and time again for not knowing, for not reading. Have you not read? Have you not read? He keeps saying, have you not read? He expects people to study. He expects people to know all about the Tanakh. Have you not read? Do you not know? And he said that so many times. And that's amazing. JC says, Shalom, everyone. Shalom, JC. Welcome as always. Great to see you, brother. Seek the Lord. Shalom, everyone. Shalom. Seek the Lord. Great to see you as always. Welcome, brother. Jordan. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, Jordan. I hope you're all having an awesome evening. All right. So if you're on TikTok, just a quick little note here. If you're on TikTok, I'm also streaming live on YouTube as well. Most people say they like YouTube better because I can share my screen. I got lots of different features over there. TikTok does not afford these kind of features, unfortunately. So if you're interested in what we're talking about, go on over to YouTube. Look me up over there. Or you can go to my bio on TikTok. There's a little link there that will lead you to my YouTube channel. Okay, so you can get to it either through my TikTok bio, or you can just go to YouTube itself and just search for Christopher Enoch. You'll find me live right there. Right now, I'm on live. Okay, so yeah, I think it's very, very important for us to be in unison, to be in unity. Yeah, there's things that we can be divided over, but let's not be divided over every little thing. I see this happen even in the past few months. Really, I mean, even on these live streams, you see people, they get their nose out of joint over just like trivial matters, and it's like you never see them again, And it's like, come on, like you think about it in the Book of Acts, you read about it. I mean, the disciples, they were disputing like over many things. They didn't call one another names. They didn't say, "Oh, you're a false prophet, you're a false teacher." They didn't divide. They disputed over many things, and a lot of things that today, if we were to talk about in the way they talked about, people would walk away and call us all kinds of names. Like, for example, what should you do to get saved? Should you be circumcised? all these kind of things. So how much of the law should you obey? What is it that the Gentiles are supposed to do? All these kind of things. And and they disputed quite often. And that shows maturity, to be able to sit down with one another, to talk about things, to be able to hash things out, and not to get offended, not to get divided over stupid little things, like whether or not Noah used nails, whether or not Pilate washed his hands with soap, stupid things. Okay. Of course, I'm being extreme and being a little bit sarcastic, but I mean, you get what I mean. So Jacob says, "Take heed that no dissension spring up among you, for union is the first condition of Israel's redemption." I think that's the same way it is with the church too. I think union is the first condition. The church needs to get out of its organizational heresies and really be who she's supposed to be. The church, unified, glorious, spotless, lawful, not lawless, but lawful. And he was on the point of revealing the great secret to them concerning the end of time. But while they were standing around the golden bed upon their father lay, the Shekinah visited him for a moment and departed as quickly. And with her departed also all trace of the knowledge of the great mystery from the mind of Jacob. He had the same experience as his own father Isaac, who also had loss of memory inflicted upon him by God to prevent him from revealing the secret at the end of time to Esau, when he summoned him to receive his blessing. All right. The accident made Jacob apprehensive that his sons were not pious enough to be considered worthy of the revelation concerning the Messianic era. And he said to them, "Ishmael and the sons of Keturah were the blemished among the issue of my grandfather Abraham. My father Isaac begot a blemished issue in Esau. And I fear now that among you too there is one that harbors the intention to serve idols." The 12 men spake and said, "Hear, O Israel, our father, the eternal, our is the one only God. And your heart is one and united in avouching the Holy One. Blessed be he to be your God. So also are our hearts one and united in avouching him." Whereto Jacob responded, Praised, be praised be the name of the glory of his majesty forever and ever. And although the whole mystery of the messianic time was not communicated to the sons of Jacob, yet the blessing of each contains some reference to the events of the future. Now, don't forget, I mean, this is, let me just pause here for a second. We're still basically more or less in the book of Genesis as we're talking about this. In Genesis, in the Hebrew, Bereshit, or in the beginning. Remember that in Isaiah it says that the Lord, he shows the end from the beginning. He shows the end of from the beginning. So we can see talking here about the future events, all foretold and foreshadowed in the book of Genesis. We can see that even Yeshua taught that as well. I mean, Yeshua said, consider, Lot's wife, Lot, right, from the book of Genesis, as it was in the days of Noah. And then in the book of Revelation, we got talk about Babylon, which is just another variation of the name Babel. Okay, also from the book of Genesis. And so every time in the book of Genesis, when we got God moving in when he uh, interrupts the world, so to speak, when it comes like the Tower of Babel, even the Adam and Eve, right? When God interrupted the world, so to speak, when judgment fell, and also in the Tower of Babel, and also in Sodom and Gomorrah, also in the days of Noah, and I'm the whole story of Joseph is another example there. The end times are all there. It's all there. I mean, we could spend a long time um, just studying the book of Genesis. And if those of you who are interested in Bible prophecy and all that kind of thing, I mean, you could spend literally years in the book of Genesis, like just digging out all the gold that's in that book alone. Because it's so much there. I mean, it's not just history. It's not, it's the word of God, but it's also a foretelling of what is to come. Another thing that also stuck out to me while I was reading this, and I'll continue here in just a moment. But so we got, let me just back up a little bit here. I'll show you guys on YouTube. Ishmael and the sons of Keturah were the blemished among the issue of my grandfather Abraham. So you'd think, well, Abraham wouldn't all of his children be like just really godly, really like good people? But it's just it just doesn't happen that way all the time. And my father Isaac, this is Jacob speaking, and my father Isaac begot a blemished issue in Esau. Okay, so Esau as well. Um, and I fear now that among you too there is one that harbors the intention to serve idols. And it reminds me as also of when Yeshua chose his 12 disciples, and he said devil. One was a devil. It's amazing, isn't it? Like, how can somebody who is a quote unquote devil live and exist and be with Jesus, Yeshua, for so long and hear all of his teachings and see all of his miracles? It reminds me, one of the most powerful meetings I have ever been in my life. One of the meeting actually that I was at in 1992. I mean, it was just so powerful, and that's the meeting I was at. It so impacted me. It so shook me that I literally wept. I'm telling you, I literally wept every single day for 3 months after that meeting. I mean, it was an amazing experience with God. Okay, that's an understatement. So, but there was somebody like within the group that we traveled to this meeting. There was several of us, and one of those that came with me to that meeting sat there and saw everything I saw, experienced everything I experienced, but not really, if you know what I mean. Not really. Uh, it was actually my friend's wife, and uh, it's like I don't know. She might not even remember that meeting at all, and yet I remember it so vividly, and it impacted my life so powerfully. You see, you can be in the same geographical place as somebody else when God comes in and does mighty things in your midst and impacts you and changes your life, and somebody sitting right beside you could be completely blind to it. Completely blind to it. That's what we see. I've seen this so many times in my life, and that's one example. But it's like, how can you I'm shocked. It's like Yeshua is like, when he was walking around, it's like it says he marveled at their unbelief. Like he marveled at their blindness, so to speak. And that's how I feel sometimes. It's like, how can you hear what I heard? How can you see what I've seen? And just like over your head, like, hello, are you there? I don't think they are. It's like God saying to Adam, where are you, Adam? Where are you? Reminds me of that old song by what's his name now? Adam, where are you? What's that? Who's that guy who sings that song? Don Francisco. Don Francisco. Adam, where are you? It's one of those good oldies. Jordan says, Amen. A lawful gospel leads to a lawful way of life. And that's awesome. For those of you who don't know, Jordan is actually quoting from the song that he wrote, Back to the Roots. I recognize that, Jordan. Awesome, awesome song and awesome lyrics. Jordan has his music, by the way. Those of you who are wondering, he has music. Um, uh, uh, different platforms all over the internet, and Amazon and iTunes and um, Apple Music, I should say, and all these other different places. So awesome music, Jordan. JC says, in Hosea, it says, Ephraim will say in the last days, why should I have anything to do anymore with idolatry and return to the Torah? I think that this is happening now. Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing. That's something to chew on for a while. Thank you very much for sharing that, JC. Yes, absolutely. Those of you on TikTok there, excuse me, thank you for the likes. Of course, it says here, as always, more likes can attract viewers. Keep it up. Thank you very much for liking that. Again, for those of you on TikTok, move on over to YouTube. I'm over there. It's way better over there, actually. I can share my screen, and I'm reading from the Legends of the Jews. Just go to my bio on TikTok. You'll see a little like place, like a little YouTube thing there. You can just tap on it. It would take you right to my YouTube channel. I'm live right now on YouTube, or you can just go over to YouTube and look me up, and you'll find me over there live right now. Just look up Sir Christopher Enoch. Okay, so yeah, Jordan is on Spotify as well. I see one John asking about another platform. Okay, continuing with the Legends of the Jews. So we read that chapter, and again, like just there's so many references to the events of the future in the book of Genesis. So many. It's absolutely amazing. You know, the Bible is like that, where you ever see the picture where it's like, how many faces do you see in this picture? It's like one big face, and then within that face you see another face, and within that face you see another face. That's exactly the way it is in the scriptures. Is so much you can spend a lot of time just studying. It's like there's no end to it. These were the words addressed by Jacob to his oldest son. Reuben, you firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength. Your portion should have been 3 crowns. You should have had the double heritage of your primogeniture and the priestly dignity and the royal power. But by reason of your sin, the birthright is conferred upon Joseph, kingship upon Judah, and the priesthood upon Levi. Now, this is very interesting as well, because again, we don't have these details in the book of Genesis. Okay, my son, I know no healing remedy for you, but the man Moses, who will ascend to God, he will make you whole, and God will forgive your sin. I bless you. May your descendants be heroes in the Torah and heroes in war, though you must lose your birthright. Yet will you be the first to enter into possession of your allotment in the Holy Land, and in your territory shall be the first of the cities of refuge. And always shall your name stand first in the list of the families of the tribes. Yes, you shall also be the whose heritage will be seized by the enemy, and the first to be carried away in the lands of exile. After Reuben had had his ears pulled, thus he retired, and Jacob called his sons Simon and Levi to his side, and he addressed them in these words: Brothers, you were of Dinah, but not of Joseph, whom you sold into slavery. The weapons of violence wherewith you smote him were stolen weapons, for it was not seemly for you to draw the sword. That was Esau's portion. To him was it said, by your sword shall you live. Into the council of the tribe of Simon my soul will not come, when they foregather at Shittim to do vicious deeds, and my glory will not be united in the assembly of Korah, the descendants of Levi. In their anger, Simon and Levi slew the prince of Shechem, and in their self-will, they sold Joseph the bull into slavery. Accursed was the city of Shechem when they entered to destroy it. If they remain united, no ruler will be able to stand up before them. No war will prosper against them. Therefore will I divide and share their possession among the possessions of the other tribes. The descendants of Simon will many of them be poor men, who will wander from tribe to tribe and beg for bread. And also Levi's tribe will gather its tithes and gifts from all the others. The words of Jacob, I will divide them in Jacob, spoken of Simon and Levi, were fulfilled on Simon in particular, when 24,000 of Simon fell at Shittim. The widows they left behind married, the widows they left behind married husbands of all the other tribes. Nevertheless, Jacob did not dismiss Simon and Levi without blessing them. The tribe of Simon was to bring forth the teachers and the beadles needed by all Israel, and Levi, the scholars that would expound the Torah and render decisions according to its teachings. Okay, just a second here before I go on. Just wanted to remind you guys as well. So next week, a week today, this is January 19th at 7 p.m., we will have Onia Safirbal on speaking about the Essenes, the Dead Sea Scrolls, also going into a lot of the other apocryphal works and so on and so forth. So just wanted to kind of remind you guys about that. So if you can join tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week, Wednesday, January 19th, 7 p.m. Eastern, make sure you do, because we'll always got lots to learn from Onia. Continuing with the legends of the Jews. When the remaining sons of Jacob heard the rebukes dealt out by their father to these three, they feared to hear like reproaches, and they tried to slip away from his presence. Especially Judah was alarmed that his father might taunt him with the trespass touching Tamar. But Jacob spoke thus to him, Judah, you deserve your name. Your mother called you Jehudah, because she gave praise to God at your birth, and so shall your brothers praise you, and they all will call themselves by your name. And as you did confess your sin openly, so also your descendants, Achan, David, and Manasseh, will make public avowal of their sins, and the Lord will hear their prayer. Your hands will send darts after the fleeing foe, and your father's sons shall pay you respect. You have the impudence of a dog and the bravery of a lion. You did save Joseph from death, and Tamar and her two sons from the flames. No people and no kingdom will be able to stand up against you. Rulers shall not cease from the house of Judah, nor teachers of the law from his posterity, until his descendant Messiah come, and the obedience of all peoples be unto him. How glorious is Messiah in the house of Judah! He girded, he will go out to do battle with his enemies. No king will prevail against him. The mountains will be dyed red with their blood, and the garments of the Messiah will be like the garments of him that presses wine. The eyes of the Messiah will be clearer than pure wine, for they will never behold unchastity and bloodshed, and his teeth be whiter than milk, for never will they bite aught that is taken by violence. Let's pause here for a second. This portion here, the mountains will be dyed red with their blood, garments of Messiah. We read about this in the books of Isaiah and a book like Joel as well. Isaiah chapter 63 is a good one. Also, we have, speaking about his teeth being whiter than milk, it reminds me of the Song of Solomon as well. And for never will they bite aught that is taken by violence. Again, this is I do. It reminds me of what I do say that I believe that Yeshua was under the Nazirite vow, and if that's the case, then that again that would account for that. Continuing with the legends of the Jews, though Issachar was older, Zebulun came next to be blessed as a reward for the sacrifice he had made for his sake. For when Issachar chose the study of the Torah as his vocation, Zebulun decided to devote himself to business and support his brother with the profits of his trade, that he might give himself to the law undisturbed. His blessing was that he would conquer the seacoast as far as Zidon or Sidon. Issachar, said Jacob, will take upon himself the burden of the study of the Torah, and all the other tribes will come to him and ask him to decide their doubts on legal questions. And his descendants will be the members of the Sanhedrin and the scholars that will occupy themselves with fixing the calendar. Again, for those of you who are new to this, the Sanhedrin is more or less the Jewish court. It's kind of like what's more or less what the set we read of in the New Testament is like it began basically with Moses with his 70 elders, and then it grew from there into the Sanhedrin. Continuing, Jacob blessed Issachar also with the blessing that the fruits of his land should be exceedingly large. And this brought a heavenly as well as an earthly profit in its gain. For when they to whom the fruits were sold marveled thereat, the Jewish merchants explained that their extraordinary size was due to the merits of the tribe of Issachar, whom God rewarded for their devotion to the Torah, and thus many of the heathen were induced to convert to Judaism. In blessing Dan, Jacob's thoughts were occupied chiefly with his descendant Samson, who, like unto God, without any manner of assistance, conferred victory upon his people. Jacob even believed the strong, heroic man to be the Messiah. But when Samson's death was revealed to him, he exclaimed, I wait for your salvation, O Lord, for your help is unto all eternity, while Samson's help is only for a time. The redemption, continued Jacob, will not be accomplished by Samson the Danite, but by Elijah the Gadite, who will appear at the end of time. Ash's blessing was the beauty of his women, who would be sought in marriage by kings and high priests. Naphtali's land, all fruits would ripen quickly, and they would be brought as presents to kings and gain royal favor for the givers. This blessing was fulfilled in the plain of Gennesaret. At the same time, Naphtali's blessing was a prophecy concerning his descendant Deborah, who was like a hind let loose against Sisera to conquer him, and she gave goodly in her song of Israel's victory. Naphtali himself deserved the description applied to Deborah, for he was swift as a will of God, and he was a fleet messenger unto his father and the tribes. They sent him whithersoever they would, and he executed their errands with dispatch. He served the brothers of Joseph as herald, to announce unto Jacob the glad tidings, Joseph is yet alive. And when the stricken father saw him approach, he said, Lo, here comes Naphtali the lovable, who proclaims peace. Joseph's blessing exceeded the blessing of all his brothers. Jacob spoke, O son, whom I bred up, Joseph, whom I raised, and who was strong to resist the enticements of sin. You did conquer all the magicians and the wise men of Egypt by your wisdom and your pious deeds. The daughters of princes cast their jewels before you, to draw your eyes upon them when you did pass through the land of Egypt. But you did not look their way, and therefore what you were made the father of two tribes. The magicians and the wise men of Egypt sought to defame you before Pharaoh and to slander you, but you did set your hope in the Almighty. Therefore, he who appeared unto me as El Shaddai bless you and grant you fertile soil and much cattle. May the blessing your father gives you now, and the blessing that his fathers Abraham and Isaac gave him, and that called forth the envy of the great of the world, Ishmael, Esau, and the sons of Keturah. May all these things be a crown upon the head of Joseph, and a chain upon the neck of him that was the ruler of Egypt, and yet diminish not the honor due to his brothers. The slander of which Jacob spoke referred to what Potiphar had said of Joseph before Pharaoh. He had complained, saying, Why did you appoint my slave, whom I did buy for 20 pieces of silver, to be ruler over the Egyptians? Joseph had then taken up his own defense, saying, When you did buy me as a slave, you did commit a capital crime. Only a descendant of Canaan may be sold as a slave, and I am a descendant of Shem, and a prince besides. If you will convince yourself of the truth of my words, but do compare me with the likeness of Sarah that Pharaoh had made of her. They brought Sarah's likeness, and verily, or truly, it appeared that Joseph resembled his ancestress, and all were convinced of his noble lineage. The blessing that Jacob bestowed upon Benjamin contains the prophecy that his tribe would provide Israel with his first ruler and his last ruler. And so it was for Saul and Esther, both belonged to the tribe of Benjamin. Likewise, Benjamin's heritage in the Holy Land harbors two extremes. Jericho ripens its fruits earlier than any other region in Palestine, while Bethel latest. Benjamin's blessing, Jacob referred also to the service in the temple, because the holy place was situated in the territory of Benjamin. And when Jacob called his youngest son a wolf that ravineth, ravens, vines. He was thinking of the judge Ehud, a great scholar, a Benjamite who conquered who conquered Eglon, king of Moab, and also he had in mind the Benjamites that captured their wives by cunning and force. Again, if he called Benjamin a wolf, Judah a lion, and Joseph a bull, he wanted to point to the three kingdoms known as wolf, lion, and bull, the doom of which was and will be sealed by the descendants of his. Babylon, the kingdom of the lion, fell in the hands of Daniel of the tribe of Judah. Media, the wolf, found its master in the Benjamite Mordecai. Joseph will subdue the horned beast, the kingdom of wickedness, before the messianic time. Now we're going to read the death of Jacob in just a minute. Let's just check some of your comments. Interesting Bible takes asks on TikTok, is it mentioning Torah before they knew about Torah? Very good question. This is what you see as you read through the book of Genesis. You'll see and you understand that the Torah existed from the beginning. Okay, the Torah existed from the beginning. It says in Genesis chapter 26, verse 5. This is even before Jacob or Joseph. It says that Abraham followed the Torah. Okay, you read it in the original Hebrew. Okay, where it says Abraham followed the laws and the commandments and all that kind of stuff. The laws and the commandments were already there. They were already in existence. Sure, they were not written down by Moses himself. Whether they were written down by somebody else is another question. But we do know that these patriarchs knew the Torah. We have lots of signs of that, lots of evidence that points to that fact. I mean, we got Abel that performed the sacrifices, Cain that brought the offerings in exactly the way the Torah prescribed. How would they know? How would Abel know to bring the firstborn lamb? How would he know about sacrifice at all? How would he know where to do it? How to do it? How would he know any of that stuff without the Torah? Without the Torah, there's no sin. So they must have had the Torah. Adam and Eve must have had the Torah. Job had the Torah because he understood what sin was, and he also performed the sacrifices and offerings as per Torah. And this was around the time of Abraham. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob also did follow the Torah. We know that even before that, Noah knew the Torah as well. He knew about all of the laws and commandments of the Torah, at least that which pertained to him. And he knew the difference between clean and unclean animals, as it says in Genesis. They were divided on the ark. He also knew exactly how to worship God, how to bring the offerings and sacrifices as well. So yes, there is not only mention of Torah before Moses, but the Torah is eternal. It is eternal. It existed before the creation of the world. It exists now. It's in full effect now. 2 Kings 17:37 is very clear of that. And also it will be at the very end when Jesus comes back to rule and reign from Jerusalem, to rule this world, to set everything straight. Boy, aren't you looking forward to that? It says in Isaiah chapter 2 and Micah chapter 4 that he is going to come back and rule and reign this world by Torah. By Torah. Okay. So thank you for the question. Okay. So JC referenced Hosea 14 verse 8. I believe that's what speaking of what he was talking about in the previous comment. Hosea chapter 14 verse 8 says, Ephraim shall say, what have I to do any more with idols? I have heard and observed them. I am like a green cypress tree. Your fruit is found in me. Awesome. Going nowhere says something interesting. I learned Mormons believe there are different levels of heaven, 3 to be exact. Which you go to depends on how you live your life. How about that? Yeah, I don't know about 3. I think there's probably a whole lot more than 3. So yeah, I would say that's, no matter where we are on earth, in heaven, even in hell, not all are equal. So yeah, definitely, um, definitely, I would say that. Clutch says on YouTube, wanted to say good evening. Good evening, Clutch. Welcome. And Jordan's talking to 1 John, also reminding us that his music is also on YouTube as well. JC says Paul was a Benjamite. Yes. And JC says a Benjamite wolf, perhaps. All right. So, yeah. Okay. So let's continue with the Legends of the Jews. Speaking of the last moments of Jacob. After Jacob had blessed each of his sons separately, he addressed himself to others, saying, according to my power did I bless you. But in future days a prophet will arise, and this man Moses will bless you too. And he will continue my blessings where I left off. He added, that the blessing of each tribe should redound to the good of all the other tribes, the tribe of Judah should have a share fine wheat of the tribe of Benjamin. Benjamin should enjoy the good barley of Judah. The tribes should be mutually helpful one to another. That makes sense. Every parent certainly desires their children supporting each other. Moreover, he charged them not to be guilty of idolatry in any form or shape, and not to let blasphemous speech pass their lips. And he taught them the order of transporting his bier. Thus, Joseph, being king, shall not help to bear it, nor shall Levi, who is to carry the ark of the Shekinah. Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun shall grasp its front end. Reuben, Simeon, and Gad at its right side. Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin the hindmost end, and Dan, Asher, and Naphtali its left side. And this is the order in which the tribes, bearing each its standard, were to march the desert, the Shekinah dwelling in the midst of them. Jacob then spake to Joseph, saying, and you, my son Joseph, forgive your brothers for your trespass against you. Forsake them not, and grieve them not, for the Lord has put them into your hands, and you should protect them all your days against the Egyptians. Also, he admonished his sons, saying that the Lord would be with them if they walked in his ways, and he would redeem them from the hands of the Egyptians. I know, he continued, great suffering will befall your sons and your grandsons in this land. But if you will obey God and teach your sons to know him, then he will send a Redeemer who will bring you forth out of Egypt and lead you into the land of your fathers. Just give me a second here. Just a second. Okay. In resignation to the will of God, Jacob awaited his end, and death enveloped him gently. Not the angel of death ended his life, but the Shekinah. The Shekinah took his soul with a kiss. The patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses, Aaron, and Miriam breathed their last in this manner through the kiss of the Shekinah. Wow. Isn't that something? Can you imagine? It's like, if I'm going to go, I want to go by experiencing the glory of God so much that I'm just gone. It takes my breath away. Literally takes my breath away. Isn't that amazing? Vinny says on YouTube, teachings of righteousness and holiness. Torah. Very good. Teachings of righteousness and holiness. Awesome. That's awesome, Vinny. 1 John 2:26, LOL. Okay. And these six, together with Benjamin, are the only ones whose corpses are not exposed to the ravages of the worms, and they neither corrupt nor decay. So we got the incorruptibles here. You know, a lot of, for those, most of you know this, but a lot of in the Roman Catholic Church, that they say that some saints are incorruptible. Thus Jacob departed this world and entered the world to come, a foretaste of which he had enjoyed here below, like the patriarchs, and none beside among men. In other respect, their life in this world resembled their life in the world to come. The evil inclination had no power over them, either here or there, wherein David resembled them. Joseph ordered his father's body to be placed upon a couch of ivory, covered with gold, studded with gems, and hung with drapery of byssus and purple. Fragrant wine was poured out at its side, and aromatic spices burnt next to it. Heroes of the house of Esau, princes of the family of Ishmael, and the lion Judah, the bravest of his, surrounded the sumptuous bier of Jacob. Come, said Judah to his brothers, let us plant a high cedar tree. Let us plant a high cedar tree at the head of our father's grave. Its top shall reach up to the skies, its branches shall shade all the inhabitants of the earth, and its roots shall grow down deep into the earth unto the abyss. For from him are sprung 12 tribes, and from him will arise kings and rulers, chapters of priests prepared to the service of the sacrifices, and companies of Levites ready to sing psalms and play upon sweet instruments. The sons of Jacob tore their garments and girded their loins with sackcloth. Sackcloth is burlap. Burlap. Why would they gird their loins with burlap? It's a sign of themselves. Of course, burlap would be the most uncomfortable material to make clothes out of. They girded their loins with burlap, threw themselves upon the ground, and strewed earth upon their heads until the dust rose in a high cloud. And when Asenath, the wife of Joseph, heard the tidings of Jacob's death, she came, and with her came the women of Egypt to weep and mourn over him. And the men of Egypt that had known Jacob repaired there and they mourned day after day. And also many journeyed down into Egypt from Canaan to take part in the 70 days for him. The Egyptians spake one to another, saying, Let us lament for the pious man Jacob, because the affliction of the famine was averted from our land, account of his merits. For instead of ravaging the land for 42 years, according to the decree of God, the famine had lasted but 2 years, and that was due to the virtues of Jacob. Joseph ordered the physicians to embalm the corpse. This he should have refrained from doing, for it was displeasing to God, who spoke, saying, Have I not the power to preserve the corpse of this pious man from corruption? Was not I that spoke the reassuring words, Fear not the worm, O Jacob, thou dead Israel? Joseph's punishment for this useless precaution was that he was the first of the sons of Jacob to suffer death. Wow, it's a serious punishment. The Egyptians, on the other hand, who devoted 40 days to embalming the corpse and preparing it for burial, were rewarded for the veneration they showed. Before he destroyed their city, God gave the Ninevites a 40 days respite on account of their king, who was the Pharaoh of Egypt. And for three score and 10 days of mourning, 70 days of mourning that the heathen made for Jacob, they were recompensed at the time of Ahasuerus. See, again, it really shows. It really shows here. And one of the lessons we can learn here from this is that God is always recompensing. He's always paying you back. He's always paying people back. And that's one thing we can really rest in and trust in and have faith in. And have faith in God. But no, rest assured that justice will be served. God will see to it. Payback is coming, either in a good way, if you're good, if you're holy, if you're just, if you do what is right, or not so good way, if you sin. And this is why we need the fear of God. This is exactly why we need the fear of God. During 70 days, from the 13th of Nisan, the date of Haman's edict ordering the extermination of the Jews, until the 23rd of Siwan, when Mordecai recalled it, they were permitted to enjoy absolute power over the Jews. When all preparations for the burial of Jacob had been completed, Joseph asked permission of Pharaoh to carry the body up into Canaan. But he did not himself go to put his petition before Pharaoh, for he could not well appear before the king in the garb of a mourner, nor was he willing to interrupt his lamentation over his father for even a brief space and stand before Pharaoh and prefer his petition. He requested the family of Pharaoh to intercede for him with the king for the additional reason that he was desirous of enlisting the favor of the king's relations, lest they advise Pharaoh not to fulfill his wish. He acted according to Maxim, seek to win over the accuser, that he cause you no annoyance. Joseph applied first to the queen's hairdresser, and she influenced the queen to favor him. And then the queen put in a good word for him with the king. At first, Pharaoh refused the permission craved by Joseph, who, however, urged him to consider the solemn oath he had given his dying father to bury him in Canaan. Pharaoh desired to seek absolution from the oath. But Joseph rejoined, Then will I apply our absolution from the oath I gave you, referring to an incident in his earlier history. The grandees of Egypt had advised Pharaoh against appointing Joseph as viceroy, and they did not receive counsel until Joseph, in his conversation with the Egyptian king, proved himself to be master of the 70 languages of the world, the necessary condition to be fulfilled before one could become ruler over Egypt. But the conversation proved something else, that Pharaoh himself was not entitled to Egyptian kingship because he lacked knowledge of Hebrew. He feared, if the truth became known, Joseph would be raised to his own place, for he knew Hebrew beside all the other tongues. In his anxiety and distress, Pharaoh made Joseph swear an oath never to betray the king's ignorance of Hebrew. Now, when Joseph threatened to have himself absolved from this oath, as well as the one to his dying father, great terror overwhelmed him, and he speedily granted Joseph permission to go up to Canaan and bury his father there. Moreover, Pharaoh issued a decree in all parts of the land, menacing those with death who would not accompany Joseph and and his brothers upon their journey to Canaan with their father's remains. And accordingly, the procession that followed the bier of Jacob was made up of the princes and nobles of Egypt as well as the common people. The bier was borne by the sons of Jacob. In obedience to his wish, not even their children were allowed to touch it. It was fashioned of pure gold, the border thereof inlaid with onyx stones and bdellium, and the cover was gold woven work joined to the bier with threads that were held together with hooks of onyx stones and bdellium. Joseph placed a large crown upon the head of the father, and a golden scepter he put into his hand, arraying him like a living king. The funeral cortege was arranged in this order. First came the valiant men of Pharaoh and the valiant men of Joseph, and then the rest of the inhabitants of Egypt. All were girt with swords and clothed in coats of mail, and the trappings of war were upon them. The weepers and mourners walked, crying and lamenting at some distance from the bier, and the rest of the people went behind it, while Joseph and his household followed together after it, with bare and in tears, and Joseph's servants were close to him, each man with his accoutrements and weapons of war. 50 of Jacob's servants preceded the bier, strewing myrrh upon the road in passing, in all manner of perfumes, so that the sons of Jacob trod upon the aromatic spices, carried the body forward. Thus the procession moved on until it reached Canaan. It halted at the threshing floor of Atad, and there they lamented with a very great and sore lamentation. But the greatest honor conferred upon Jacob was the presence of the Shekinah, who accompanied the cortege. This is very awesome. When you're honored with the presence of God, well, that is an honor, isn't it? The greatest honor. The Canaanites had no intention at first to take part in the mourning made for Jacob, but when they saw the honor shown him, they joined the procession of the Egyptians, loosing the girdles of their garments as a sign of grief. Also, the sons of Esau, Ishmael, and Keturah appeared, though their design in coming was to seize the opportunity and make war upon the sons of Jacob. But when they saw Joseph's crown suspended from the bier, the Edomite and Ishmaelite kings and princes followed his example and attached theirs to it too, and it was ornamented with 36 crowns. Nevertheless, the conflict was not averted. It broke out in the end between the sons of Jacob and Esau and his followers. When the former were about to lower the body of their father into the cave of Machpelah, Esau attempted to prevent it, saying that Jacob had used his allotted portion of the tomb for Leah, and the only space left for a grave belonged to himself. For, continued Esau, though I sold my birthright unto Jacob, I yet have a portion in the tomb as a son of Isaac. The sons of Jacob, however, were well aware of the fact that their father had acquired Esau's share in the cave, and they even knew that a bill of sale existed. But Esau, assuming properly that the document was left behind in Egypt, denied that any such had ever been made out. And the sons of Jacob sent Naphtali, the fleet runner, back to Egypt to fetch the bill. That's it. Send the fastest one back there. Meanwhile, while this altercation was going on between Esau and the others, Hushim, the son of Dan, arose and inquired in astonishment why they did not proceed with the burial of Jacob. For he was deaf and had not understood the words that had passed between the disputants. When he heard what it was all about, and that the ceremonies would until Naphtali should return from Egypt with the bill of sale, he exclaimed with indignation, "My grandfather shall lie here unburied until Naphtali comes back." And he seized a club and dealt Esau a vigorous blow, so that he died, and his eyes fell out of their sockets and dropped upon Jacob's knees. And Jacob opened his own eyes and smiled. Esau being dead, his brother's burial could proceed without hindrance, and Joseph interred him in the cave of Machpelah according with his wish. His other children had left arrangements connected with the burial of their father's body to their brother Joseph, for they reflected that it was a greater honor for Jacob if a king concerned himself about his remains rather than simple private individuals. The head of Esau, as he lay slain by the side of Jacob's grave, rolled down into the cave and fell into the lap of Isaac, who prayed to God to have mercy upon his son, but his supplications were in vain. God spoke, saying, "As I live, he shall not be holy of the Lord." Okay, we'll continue here in just a moment. Mark over there on YouTube says, "Shalom, shalom, Mark. Welcome. Great to see you." JC says, "It's amazing that people, including myself, would ever believe that Yud He Waw He ever suspended the law. Our own conscience knows there is a law. My son agrees with me. He is a child." Yeah, it really is amazing. Yeah, I hear you. I'm with you on that. It's like it, it's just it's there's so many people that believe that, but they don't really clue in till it's like they don't really think about it. They don't really think about it. So user says over there on TikTok, Shalom, would love to discuss the scripture with you. Okay. So someone on YouTube thinks that they're amazed that eating pork is a sin. Yes, it's a sin on many levels for sure. It's a sin on many levels. Anybody who believes, and this is what JC was saying here on YouTube, anybody who claims to be a believer in the Holy Scriptures, okay, any Christian who claims to believe in the Bible, um, I mean, it should be quite clear, right? It should be quite clear. God said not to do it, therefore that settles it, right? God said not to do it, that settles it. And by the way, there are many reasons. It's not just health reasons. There are other reasons as well why not to eat these kind of foods. Um, Spiritual as well. Okay, so let's continue with reading the Legends of the Jews. Now we are, again, for those of you just joining, by the way, if you're on TikTok and you want to have a little bit better experience, go on over to YouTube. You can find my YouTube channel in my TikTok bio. It's actually a little button there that you can tap on, and it would take me right. It would take you right to my YouTube channel, and I'm live right now on YouTube. Also, if you have a hard time finding it, you can just go to YouTube and look up, do a search for Christopher Enoch. You'll find me there live right now. We're reading the Legends of the Jews, Volume 2, Chapter 1, and we're getting into the last quarter of that chapter. It's taken a long time to get through this one chapter. Okay, so the next section is called "The Sons of Jacob at War with the Sons of Esau." Jacob, having been interred with royal pomp, and the 7 days period of mourning over, the conflict between the sons of Jacob and the sons of Esau broke out anew. In the skirmish that had ensued when Esau advanced a claim upon a place in the cave of Machpelah, while his brother's remains still lay unburied, he lost 40 of his men. After his death, fortune favored his sons a little. 80 of their followers were slain, while of the sons of Jacob not one was lost. Joseph succeeded in capturing Zapho, the son of Eliphaz, and 50 of his men, and he clapped them in chains and carried them off to Egypt. Thereupon, the rest of the attacking army led by Eliphaz, fled Mount Seir, taking with them the headless corpse of Esau to bury it in his own territory. The sons of Jacob pursued after them, but they slew none out of respect for the remains of Esau. On the third day, a great army gathered together, consisting of the inhabitants of Seir and the children of the east, and they marched down into Egypt with the purpose of making war upon Joseph and his brothers. In the battle that came off, this army was almost totally destroyed. Not less than 600,000 men were mowed down by Joseph and his warriors, and the small remnant fled precipitately. Returned to their own after this fatal campaign, the sons of Esau and the sons of Seir fell to quarreling among themselves, and the sons of Seir demanded that their former allies leave the place, because it was they that had brought misfortune upon the country. The sons of Esau thereupon dispatched a messenger in secret to their friend Agnias, king of Africa, begging his aid against the sons of Seir. He granted their request and sent them troops consisting of foot soldiers and mounted men. The sons of Seir, on their part, also sought allies, and they secured the help of the children of the east and of the Midianites, who put warriors at their disposal. In the encounters that ensued between the hostile forces, the sons of Esau were defeated again and again, partly on account of treachery in their own ranks, for their men sometimes deserted to the enemy while the combat was on. At last, however, in the battle that took place in the desert of Paran, the sons of Esau gained a decisive victory. They massacred all the warriors of the sons of Seir, and the Midianites and the children of the east were put to flight. Thereafter the sons of Esau returned to Seir, and they slew all the inhabitants of the place, men, women, and children, sparing only 50 lads and maidens. The former they used as slaves, and the latter they took to wife. They also enriched themselves with the spoils, seizing all the possessions of the sons of Seir, and the whole land was divided among the 5 sons of Esau. Now these descendants of Esau determined to put a king over themselves, but in consequence of the treachery committed during the war, there prevailed such hatred and bitterness among them that they decided never to appoint a ruler from their own people. Their choice fell upon Bela, the son of Beor, one of the warriors sent to them by King Agnias. His peer could not be found among the allied troops for bravery, wisdom, and handsome appearance. They set the royal crown upon his head, built a palace for him, and gave him gifts of silver, gold, and gems, and lived in great opulence. He reigned happily for 30 years and met him in a war against Joseph and his brothers. This war came about because the sons of Esau could not banish from their memory the disgrace of the defeat inflicted upon them by Joseph and his people. Having enlisted the aid of Agnias and of the Ishmaelites and other nations of the east, they set forth on a second campaign against Egypt, in the hope of delivering Zapho and his followers from the hands of Joseph. In spite of their enormous host, they had no less than 800,000 men of and cavalry. They were defeated at Ramses by Joseph and his brothers and their little company of 600 men. Beside their king Bela, they left 1/4 of their army upon the field. The loss of their king discouraged them grievously, and they took to flight, hard pressed by Joseph, who cut down many of the fugitives. When he returned from battle, Joseph ordered manacles and fetters to be put upon Zapho and his followers, and their captivity was made more bitter unto them than it had been before. The sons of Esau appointed Jobab of Bozrah to succeed their dead king Bela. His reign lasted 10 years, but they desisted from all further attempts at waging war with the sons of Jacob. Their last experience with them had been too painful, but the enmity they cherished against them was all the fiercer, and their hatred never abated. Their third king was Husham, and he ruled over them for 20 years. During his reign, Zapho succeeded in making good his escape from Egypt. He was received kindly by Agnias, king of Africa, and appointed commander-in-chief of his troops. He used every means of persuasion to induce his sovereign lord to enter into war with Egypt, but in vain, for Agnias was only too well acquainted with the strength and heroism of the sons of Jacob. For many years, he resisted Zapho's arguments and blandishments. Indeed, as it was, Agnias had his hands full with other warlike enterprises. It had happened about this time that a man of the land of Kittim, Uzi by name, whom his countrymen venerated as a god, died in the city of Posimana. And he left behind a fair and clever daughter. Agnias heard of Yania's beauty and wisdom, and he sued for her hand. And he sued for her hand, and his request granted by the people of Kittim. The messengers of Agnias were hanging away from Kittim, bearing to their master the promise of the inhabitants that Yania should become his wife. Then Turnus, king of Benevento, arrived on the same errand. His suit was rejected, for the people of Kittim were afraid to break the promise given to Agnias. In his anger, Turnus went to Sardinia to make war upon King Lucus, a brother of Agnias, intending to deal with the latter as soon as the other was rendered harmless. Hearing of the design hatched by Turnus, Agnias hastened to Sardinia to the assistance of his brother, and a battle took place in the valley of Campania. Against Turnus were arrayed Agnias, his brother Lucas, and the son of the latter, Niblos, whom his father had appointed commander in chief of the Sardinian troops. In the first encounter, Turnus was the victor, and the Sardinians lost their general Niblos. But in the second engagement of the army of Turnus was routed completely, and he himself was left dead on the field. His army fled, pursued closely by Agnias as far as the crossroad between Rome and Albano. Niblos's body was put inside a golden statue, and his father erected a high tower over his grave and another over the grave of Turnus. And these two buildings, connected by a marble pavement, stand opposite to each other on the crossroad at which Agnias left off from following after the fugitive army. The king of Africa went on to the city of Benevento, but he took no harsh measures against it and its inhabitants, because it belonged to the land of Kittim at the time. Thenceforth, however, bands of soldiers from Africa made incursions now and again into the land of Kittim under the lead of Zapho, the captain of the African army. Agnias meantime went to Posimama to solemnize his marriage with Yania, and he returned with her to his capital in Africa. Zapho, king of Kittim. This time, Zapho did not leave off urging Agnias to invade Egypt, and he succeeded finally in persuading the king to consider his wish, and a great army was equipped against Egypt and the sons of Jacob. Among the shield bearers were Balaam, or Balaam, the 15-year-old son of Beor, a wise youth and an adept in magic, and an adept in magic, and the king acquainted him with the issue of war upon which they were entering. Balaam took wax and molded the figures of men to represent the army of Agnias and the army of the Egyptians. And he plunged them into magic water and let them swim. And and it appeared that the African army was subdued by the Egyptians. Agnias accordingly gave up the campaign, and Zapho, seeing that his sovereign could not be persuaded into war with the sons of Jacob, fled the country and betook himself to Kittim. The people of Kittim received him with great honors, and they offered him much stay with them and conduct their wars. It happened once while Zapho was in the mountains of Coptazia, where the inhabitants of Kittim had taken refuge before the troops of the African king, that he had to go on a search for an ox that had strayed away. And he discovered a cave, the opening of which was barred by a great stone. He shivered the stone in pieces, and entering the cave, he saw an animal formed like a man above and a he-goat below, and he killed the strange beast, which was in the very act of devouring his lost ox. There was great rejoicing. There was great rejoicing among the people of Kittim, for the monster had been doing havoc among their cattle, and in gratitude they set aside one day of the year, which they called by Zapho's name, in honor of their liberator. And all the people brought him presents and offered sacrifices to him. At this time it came to pass that Yania, the wife of King Agnias, fell into grievous sickness, and the physicians ascribed her illness to the climate and to the water of Africa, to which she, a native of the land of Kittim, could not get accustomed, because she had been in the habit of using water of the river Forma, which her forefathers had drawn to her house through a conduit. Agnias sent to the land of Kittim and had some of the water of the Forma brought to Africa. Finding it much lighter than the water of his own country, he built a huge canal from the land of Kittim to Africa. And the queen henceforth had all the former water she needed. Besides, he took earth and stone from Kittim and built a palace for Yania, and she recovered from her illness. Meantime, Zapho had won a decisive victory over the African troops that had made an incursion into the land of Kittim, and the people chose him as king. His first undertaking was a campaign against the sons of Tubal in the islands of the sea, and again he was successful. He subdued them completely. On his return, the people built a great palace for Zapho, and they renewed his kingship, and he continued until his death to reign as king of Kittim and of Italy. During the first 13 years of his reign, the Arabs made no attempt to disturb the peace of Kittim, but then they invaded the land only to be severely repulsed by Zapho, who pursued the troops up to the very borders of Africa. And Agnias, the king, such consternation that he did not venture to make reprisals for some time. When he finally made a second attempt, his troops were annihilated by Zapho down to the very last man. Now Agnias, in despair, assembled all the inhabitants of Africa, as numerous as the sand on the seashore, and he united his great host with the army of his brother Lucas, and thus he made his third attempt upon Zapho and the people of the land of Kittim. Alarmed, Zapho wrote to his brothers in Seir and entreated their king Hadad to send him aid. But the people of Seir had concluded an alliance with Agnias as far as under their first king Bela, and they refused Zapho's request. And the king of Kittim had to face the host of 800,000 men mustered by Agnias with his little band of 3,000. Then the people of Kittim spake to their king Zaphos, saying, Pray for us unto God, unto the God of your ancestors. Perhaps he may deliver us from the hand of Agnias and his army, for we have heard that he is a great God, and he delivers all that trust in him. Zapho prayed unto the Lord, saying, O Lord, God of Abraham and Isaac, my fathers, this day may it be made known that you are a true God, and all the gods of the nations are vain and useless. Remember now this day unto me your covenant with Abraham our father, which our ancestors related unto us, and graciously with me this day, for the sake of Abraham and Isaac our fathers, and me and the sons of Kittim from the hand of the king of Africa, come against us for battle. God gave ear unto Zaphos' prayer, and in the first day's battle, one half of the African army fell. Agnias forthwith dispatched a decree to his country, ordering, on penalty of death and confiscation of property, that all the males of the land, including boys that had passed their 10th year, were to join the army and fight against the people of Kittim. In spite of these accessions, 300,000 strong, Agnias was beaten again by Zapho in the second battle. The African general Sosipater having fallen slain, the troops broken into flight. At their head, Agnias with Lucas the brother and Asdrubal the son of Agnias. After this dire defeat, the Africans made no further attempt to disturb the peace of Kittim, and their incursions ceased forever. In spite of the great victory that Zapho had won with the help of God, the king of Kittim walked in the idolatrous ways of the people whom he ruled, in the ways of the sons of Esau, and in the ways of the sons of Esau, for, as says the proverb of the ancients, out of the wicked comes forth wickedness. And Zapho was not other than the rest of the sons of Esau. The severe defeat inflicted upon Agnias drove Balaam from Africa to Kittim, and he was received with great honors by Zapho, who welcomed him on account of his deep wisdom. Now Zapho thought the time had arrived for him to carry out his plan of vengeance against the posterity of Jacob, all the more as in the meantime Joseph had died, and also his brothers and the valiant men of Pharaoh had passed. He was joined in the enterprise by Hadad Edom and by the nations of the east and the Ishmaelites. The allied army was so vast that the space it covered as it stood in rank and file was equal to 3 days' journey. It formed in battle array in the valley of Pathros, and it was met by 300,000 Egyptians and 150 Israelites from Goshen. But the Egyptians did not trust the Ishmaelites for their defection to the sons of Esau and Ishmael. They made an agreement with them that the Israelites were not to come to the help of the Egyptians until it appeared that the enemy were getting the upper hand. Zapho had a high opinion of Balaam's ability, desired his magic arts and find out what would be the outcome of the war. But Balaam's knowledge failed him. He could not satisfy the king's wish. The Egyptians got the worst of the first encounter between the two hostile armies, but the aspect of things changed as soon as they summoned the Israelites to aid them. The Israelites prayed to God to support them with his help, and the Lord heard their prayer. Then they threw themselves upon Zepho and his allies, and after they had cut down several thousand men, such dismay and confusion took hold of the enemy that they fled hastily, pursued by the Israelites as far as the boundary of the country. The Egyptians, instead of coming to the assistance of the Israelites, had taken to flight, leaving the small band of their allies to the huge host of their adversaries. Embittered by such treatment, the Israelites slew many as 200 Egyptians, under the text that they thought they belonged to the enemy. The nations at war. The nations at war. Hadad, or Hadad, the king of Edom, who had failed to gain fame and fame and honor in the Egyptian campaign, was favored by fortune in another war, a war against Moab. The Moabites shrank from meeting Hadad alone, and they made an alliance with Israelites. In the thick of the fight, the Moabites fled from the field of battle, leaving the Midianites to their fate, and these deserted allies of theirs were cut down to a man by Hadad and his Edomites. The Moabites saved their skins and suffered only the inconvenience of having to pay tribute. To avenge the faithfulness practiced against them, the Midianites, supported by their kinsmen, the sons of Keturah, gathered a mighty army and attacked the Moabites the following year. But Hadad came to their assistance, and again he inflicted a severe defeat upon the Midianites, who had to give up their plan of revenge against Moab. This is the beginning of the inveterate enmity between the Moabites and the Midianites. If a single Moabite is caught in the land of Midian, he is killed without mercy, and a Midianite in Moab fares no better. After the death of Hadad, the Edomites installed Samlah of Masrekah as their king, and he reigned 18 years. It was his desire to take up the cause of Agnias, the old ally of the Edomites, and chastise Zepho for having gone to war with him. But his people, the Edomites, would not permit him to undertake aught that was amicable to their kinsmen, and Samlah had to abandon the plan. In the 14th year of Samlah's reign, Zepho died, having been king of Kittim for 50 years. His successor was Janus, one of the people of Kittim, who enjoyed equally long reign. Balaam had made an escape to Egypt after the death of Zepho, and he was received there with great demonstrations of honor by the king and all the nobles, and Pharaoh appointed him to be royal counselor, for he had heard much about his exceeding great wisdom. In the Edomite kingdom, Samlah was succeeded by Saul of Pethor, a youth of surpassing beauty, whose reign lasted 40 years. His successor upon the throne was Baal-Hamon, king for 38 years, during which period the Moabites rose up against the Edomites, to whom they had been paying tribute since the time of Hadad, and they succeeded in throwing off the yoke of the stranger. The times were troubled everywhere. Agnias, the king of Africa, died, and also the death of Janus occurred, the king of Kittim. The successors to these two rulers Asdrubal, the son of Agnias, and Latinus, the king of Kittim, then entered upon long drawn out war for many years. At first, the fortune of war favored Latinus. He sank African ships and inflicted one defeat after another upon Asdrubal. And finally, this king of Africa lost his life upon the battlefield. After destroying the canal from Kittim to Africa, built many years before by Agnias, Latinus returned to his own country, taking with him as his wife Ushpiziwan, excuse me, Ushpizina, the daughter of Asdrubal, who was so wondrously beautiful that her countrymen wore her likeness upon their garments. Latinus did not enjoy the fruits of his victory long. Annibal, the younger brother of Asdrubal, and his successor in the royal power, went to Kittim in ships and carried on a series of wars lasting 18 years, in the course of which he killed off 80,000 of the people of Kittim, not sparing the princes and the nobles. And the end of this protracted period went back to Africa and reigned over his people in quiet and peace. The Edomites, during the 48 years of the reign of Hadad, the successor of Baal Hamon, fared no better than the people of Kittim. Hadad's first undertaking was to reduce the Moabites again under the sovereignty of Edom, but he had to desist because he could not offer successful resistance to a newly chosen king of theirs, one of their own people, who enlisted the aid of the Amorites. The allies commanded a great host, and Hadad was overwhelmed. These wars were followed by others between Hadad of Edom and Abimenos of Kittim. The latter was the attacking party, and he invaded Seir with a great army. The sons of Seir were defeated abjectly. Their king Hadad was taken captive and then executed by Abimenos, and Seir was made a province subject to Kittim and ruled by a governor. Thus ended the independence of the sons of Esau. Henceforth, they had to pay tribute to Kittim, over which Abimenos ruled until his death in the 38th year of his reign. Okay, so I'm going to pick up this next portion. I'm going to pick up this one here tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to, over there on YouTube, Brenda says hello. Hello, Brenda. Welcome. Good to see you. Yes, so we're going to pick up where we left off. Joseph's magnanimity. Okay, and we're going to end off that chapter of the Legends of the Jews tomorrow. All right, guys. So, as always, it has been awesome. Thank you very much for the likes there. Majikal on TikTok. It has been awesome. Thank you very much, guys, for your fellowship, for your questions, your comments. Awesome. Remember, again, next week, a week from today, that would be January 19th, excuse me, Wednesday, January 19th, 7 p.m. We're having Onia with us, speaking about the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Essenes, their doctrine, their practices. The doctrine and the practices of the people who is behind the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we're going to have our special guest on next week, and that's going to be very interesting. So make sure you got that on your calendars. And by the way, everybody, if you're new here, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you got those notifications on, because when I do go live, I want you guys to join me. And we will, Lord willing, have some more special guests on as the Lord as the Lord wills. So that's going to be awesome. All right, guys. 1 John 2:26 says on YouTube, thank you, Christopher. Shalom. Thank you very much. 1 John 2:26. I appreciate you, brother. KMJJ says, shalom and blessings. Good night, all. Shalom to you, KMJJ. Jordan, also, Jordan Thomas on YouTube. Always a blessing to be here. Always a blessing to have you, brother. Blessings multiplied back to you as well. Psalm 94 says, shalom. Have a great night. You too. JC says, shalom. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you very much, JC. It's always a blessing having you guys. And of course, Will says, good night, brother. Good night, Will. It's always a blessing having you guys. All right, tomorrow we'll pick up where we left off and we'll see what the Lord has for us tomorrow. Amen. All right, guys, as always, Lord bless you and keep you, make his face to shine upon you, lift up his countenance upon you, and give you wonderful, wonderful shalom. Amen. Amen. See you tomorrow.